The views and opinions expressed on the following program may not necessarily reflect the views of the staff, management, or board of Hope Media Group and KSBJ. It's what's happening around us, in our town, suburb, city, in our community. It's Community Beat with Kim Kasi McKee on 89.3 KSBJ.
Hello and welcome to Community Beat, where we're keeping you tuned in to the topics that are impacting our local communities and helping them thrive. I'm your host, Kim Kasi McKee. And today's guest will be talking to us about a resource to help strengthen marriages or to build a foundation before getting married. My guest is Annetta Whitney with Family Life, a part of Crew Ministry. Welcome, Annetta, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Good morning to you too. Thank you for having me.
So, Annetta, tell us about your ministry through Crew.
Well, my husband and I, we serve as the representatives for Houston's Weekend to Remember. I think to give a better picture is to give the backstory.
Please.
So actually listening to your radio station, I discovered Family Life, and I discovered the Weekend to Remember. I was driving actually to Lufkin, Texas, and on one of those back roads in a dark place in my own marriage, I was broken. I was bitter. I didn't like my husband, but I felt like divorce really wasn't an option. Mm-hmm. And they broadcast, there was a Weekend to Remember. I said, I think this might be good. But we couldn't even afford to go. Mm. And I said, I'm going to pull out my college resources. I'm going to just call and see if there's any way, because we needed to go. Mm. And what I can say is we were in the ballroom in Texas at the Gaylord. And like I said, we were in a desperate, desperate place. Mm. And it wasn't the Weekend to Remember. God met us there. Mm. I mean, he met us. All the things that I had not forgiven my husband for, I said, this is what Jesus did. He forgave me, so I must forgive my husband. And it was the same for him. Mm. And so we started volunteering with the Weekend to Remember back in 2009.
Wow.
And so fast forward, the Lord would have us now serving with Family Life with the Weekend to Remember here in Texas.
Wow. Talking about a full circle story. And that was all of those years ago. So that just shows that there's hope for marriages that might even seem to be on a respirator, may be in that dark place and thinking, man, this is going nowhere. But that one encounter made such a huge difference. So, Annetta, how did all of this get started?
So, Family Life is a Crew subsidiary. And what happened was with Crew, Campus Crusade for Christ, the missionaries were coming off the field in broken places. Their marriages were a mess. Mm. And what I really see is ministry is so very costly. And so what they developed was they called it the family emphasis. And so the family emphasis is now today the Weekend to Remember. So giving godly principles on how to have thriving marriages, even if they're barely surviving, through the gospel message and through the hope of Jesus. So that's how it all began. The Weekend to Remember was what we called the family emphasis.
Talk to us about a Weekend to Remember.
So the Weekend to Remember has served over 1.5 million couples.
Wow, that's huge.
Since its existence. And it was made to make families and marriages stronger. It's a 2.5-day faith-based investment and a romantic getaway. And so it's not just for married people. Mm-hmm. It's for people that are engaged, that are seriously dating. The focus is oneness. Mm-hmm. So if you can't keep your hands off of your spouse, we want you to come. And if you can't look them in the eyes, if you're just such disgust or hurt or bitterness, we want you to come. So you don't have to have a perfect marriage. What we want is you to come with the desire and the hope that you'll have a more fulfilling and thriving relationship. The Weekend to Remember gives the opportunity for couples to have that full getaway experience. You take all the distractions away with one thing in mind, and that is oneness, so you can refresh, recharge, and focus. And one of the things I really love about the Weekend to Remember, the research has really shown that 96% of the guests have found improvement in their relationship and oneness.
That's awesome. Well, I went to my first Weekend to Remember about a year and a half ago, and it was amazing. I remember thinking, well, Carrie, we have a great marriage already, and I'm thinking, what can this do? And I can honestly say the way it facilitates discussion and some of the things that you're talking about, even the intentionality of having a date night experience. And we were able to connect with two other couples, which I knew them when we went, but we're in community now. On a regular basis. I mean, it just because we had dinner together and a few meals together, and we learned how much we had in common, being couples in ministry, and we just feel like we're connected for life. So I've already talked to them about this one. I'm like, hey, we got to go back for a reunion.
All right.
Yeah. So it really is a wonderful experience. And you mentioned couples at various stages in their marriages. And I can remember they gave some door prizes. They made some special acknowledgments. And there was a couple that had been married for, I think, 2 weeks.
Yes.
And then you had a couple that had been married for 52 years.
Yes.
It's like, wow. Talking about running the gamut. But even having all of those people together in the same room, that opportunity for connection and for wisdom and for sharing stories, it's pretty incredible. So I can echo what you're saying. It literally is a weekend to remember, and it's good to know that people have a place that they can go where no matter how desperate they're feeling, they can find some hope.
Yes. You did say, well, who is it for? And I did say it's for married couples, it's for engaged couples and seriously dating. But I really want to showcase those that are seriously dating and engaged. If you attend the Weekend to Remember, it does qualify for the Together Texas program, where you can get a discount on your marriage license, $60. And $60, that can at least get at least one extra plate at the reception, right? And it really gives a good foundation to build upon, to have a thriving marriage. I think it is probably one of the best things to do before stepping in.
That is awesome. So again, you're not saying this is only targeting people who are married, but you are encouraging people who are considering getting married or who are engaged. And talk about that incentive again, about the discount.
So for engaged couples, if you're getting married in Texas, it does qualify for the Together Texas program. And so they would meet us and we would give them the certificate, and they would be allowed the discount to get the $60 off of their marriage license. And then one other thing that my husband and I have really try to fulfill the mission statement for family life is really developing effective marriages and families, one home at a time. And so we derived a Luke 14 initiative. And basically in Luke 14, it's a call by Jesus. He gives a parable. Go into the cities, go behind the hedges, just go in places that you don't normally go into. And so with the Luke 14 initiative, it is targeted towards veterans, first responders, and Spanish speakers. With this initiative, we just want to be able to say that we fulfill the mission statement, every home. So with this initiative, it will give scholarships to those designated people to help to be more of a support and just to celebrate their sacrifices that they've made.
Talk a little bit about, because you mentioned Luke 14 initiative, it's for veterans, first responders, and Spanish speakers. I think it's important that people know that Spanish speakers will have an opportunity to be a part of a Weekend to Remember in their language.
That is true. So for the last 2 years, we have offered the Weekend to Remember in Spanish.
Awesome.
So in 2024, we're going to have to hold that, but it will definitely be started back in 2025. But we want to be able to reach every home, and we want to be able to reach that so that people can hear it in their native language. And so that is one of the things that we're really striving and pushing. We're in Texas.
Yes.
We have to be able to offer this resource in that language.
Absolutely. I know that Weekend to Remember is coming to the Sugar Land area here in Texas. It's been in the Woodlands in times past. Is this, how far reaching is this? Is this in pretty much all over the nation?
Yes. So the Weekend to Remember is held in about 75 locations.
Wow.
Throughout
Incredible.
the year. So in the fall and in the spring. And traditionally, the Houston event has been held in the spring. So it's all throughout the country.
That is wonderful. What should a couple expect to experience during this conference? I know if you're coming for the first time, you read the description, but then there's going to be so much more than you expect.
Yes, I would definitely agree. Well, we'll be in Sugar Land June the 7th through the 9th at the Marriott in Sugar Land. So one thing I want to say, this is not a counseling session. This is not a small group with 1,000 people in one room. There will be gifted speakers there that will really talk about the challenges that couples face and encourage the couples on how to strengthen their relationship, that there's hope through biblical principles, through real life stories and one-to-one projects, just like you said earlier, and that you can take those projects and all those things that you've learned and apply them immediately. So the guests will arrive on Friday night, and they will learn about the threats that come to marriage and the root of communication issues. And then Saturday, they will learn about the threats to oneness and how to move through conflict, really learn about God's design for marriage and sexual intimacy in marriage. And then on Sunday, there'll be 2 breakout sessions on blended families. And then there'll be a breakout session for military families also. And then the men and the women are in 2 different places, and they have real talk about being a husband, being a man, being a wife, being a woman. And then they come back together and they cast a vision of, we're going to put a stake in the ground. We're going to be one, like a 3-stranded cord is not easily broken. And then there's a vow renewal. And so that's what we have to offer at the Weekend to Remember from Friday to Sunday.
Wow, that's incredible. I am looking at my workbook from the Weekend to Remember, and that was such a neat aspect to be able to literally have a takeaway, something to reference. Even when you're talking to other couples, I can remember going back into this for some tips in counseling some couples from church, you know, and so it's all that you've said and so much more. So definitely want to encourage you that if you're in the area, you want to consider experiencing a Weekend to Remember. And the truth is, Annetta, it's not like a one and done kind of deal. It's new every time, isn't it? It's not like you go one time and say, oh, I've been there, done that, no need to go back.
Right. I would agree with that.
Because there's going to be some different speakers and a whole new crew of people. So, and you'll be in a different space.
Right. I would agree. We have a lot of people that come year after year, or they do it, every 3rd year. And so we're all on a different journey.
That's right.
And so it's almost like you read scripture for the first time, and then you read it years later. It's like, oh, I didn't see that. I didn't learn that. And how God He is moving all the time.
That's right.
And so our prayer is that He continues to move, especially at the Weekend to Remember, because we've invited Him in there, because there is hope. There is so much hope.
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Annetta Whitney. She's with Family Life, a part of Crew Ministry, and they are presenting a Weekend to Remember. This is a very special weekend for married couples and for marriage hopefuls, maybe people who are dating and are engaged, it's a wonderful opportunity to build that foundation, help it to be solid if you're believing that God is moving you in the direction of marriage. Annetta, I know that you do the Luke 14 initiative where you help veterans and first responders and Spanish speakers with scholarships. I believe you also have something special you do for people in ministry. Tell us about that.
Yes, we do. I think one thing that I'm learning now that I've gone behind the veil, ministry could be a very lonely place. And there actually is a lot of research to support that those that are on the front lines, because I'm going to call it the front lines, that they don't have a place. They don't have a place. And so Family Life has been committed to providing scholarships for pastors. All they have to do is go on the site, register for the Weekend to Remember, and at the very top, they can indicate they're a pastor. And when they indicate that, they'll have a short interview, and then they're scholarshiped and to come.
Wow.
And to really disengage, take everything on. You're not on. You are a spouse that weekend to really, really refresh your first ministry.
That's awesome. Well, you know, the first time I heard about that and my husband and I wanted to take advantage of that, our next thought was let's invite all the couples from church to come. And then we decided, no. We said this first one, let us just go and experience it. And I'm so glad we did it that way, because it's hard to not be on when you're there with all of your members.
Right. That is true.
Yeah. And so we decided, now that we've experienced it for the first time, now when we go back this time, we want to make sure some other couples experience that, because it really can make a huge difference in the health and the wellness of that marriage.
So what's really interesting, there was a pastor, and he said in one of his reviews, he says that he felt renewed. He was more prepared to plant a church together. And he stated, we cannot lead others unless we're healthy, strong unit together first.
That's good. That's absolutely correct. And I say that often to my husband, that I can't imagine pastors, when it's, say, a husband and wife team, trying to pastor others when your marriage is in trouble. That has to be extremely difficult, because after all, it's kind of like the parents. You put on that strong face, everything is okay. You're trying, and so to have that mask on when you know really you're crying, and well, I've heard it put this way: bleeding while leading, bleeding while leading. And so, what a blessing to know that there is a resource, an opportunity like a Weekend to Remember, where you're in good company.
Yes, a safe place.
A safe place. And I was amazed. You all had a reception for pastors, and the room was packed.
It's going to be packed again. Get ready.
Wow, that was just amazing and beautiful to see. These pastors taking the time to invest in their own home life first.
Yes.
That means everything. So are there ways, Annetta, for couples to stay connected beyond the weekend experience? Because you come and that weekend experience is, I mean, like they say, you are hyped, crunked up, all of that. Then what? You know, how can you stay connected and doing things that'll continually keep your marriage moving in the right direction?
That's a great question. I always thought, I said, well, what happens on the 31st day after attending the Weekend to Remember? If there's no follow-up, it is that you've gone to a 3-day event and you had a good time. You really, really want to fan the flame. And so I think Family Life has done a tremendous job in providing countless devotions, broadcasts on Family Life Today, podcasts, articles, small groups, courses to grow oneness in families and marriages. The one thing I think is really unique, Houston will be able to offer, after our Weekend to Remember, a host of small groups in person, will be also virtually, and an opportunity, just like you said, community. Because two is so much better than one. And then they do have a map on familylife.com/small group map. And you can go on the map and you can look to see where in the country, not just in Houston, if you want to be a part of something, a community to build oneness in your families and marriages.
So one of the things I heard you mentioned was the word volunteer.
Yes.
So how do you utilize volunteers if people want to come and help in some way?
Oh, like I said, two is so much better than one. And so far we've got over 500 guests that are registered for our Sugarland event. And so that means you need people to help. We have a full prayer team. So 40 days before the event starts, we're praying.
Wow, that's awesome.
And not only do we pray 40 days before the event, we're praying the entire event from beginning to end. So we have a team of volunteers that are praying. We have ushers, we have greeters, we have those that are at the photo booth, we have those that put materials in the seats, and then more importantly, we have people that serve as disciplers, because the invitation to make a decision for Christ is given. And so we need people to disciple, as you said, or I've heard said, iron does sharpen iron, so that you're not, I accepted Jesus, what do I do from here? So we have people that will not only evangelize throughout the whole weekend, but then to come alongside of you after the weekend, after you've made that decision.
That's awesome. Wow. Love it, love it, love it. So tell us where does a person need to go to either register for a Weekend to Remember, or if they want to connect as a volunteer?
All right. I love it. So you can register by calling 1-800-FL-TODAY. That's 1-800-FL-TODAY. Or you can go online to familylife.com/Weekend to Remember. That's familylife.com/Weekend to Remember. If you do meet the criteria for the Luke 14 initiative, that is, if you are a veteran or a first responder, you would have to contact us directly, because this is something that we saw. Family Life's mission statement is one home at a time. And so this is the home that started it, so it has to come through us directly.
And us as in you and your husband?
Yes, me and my husband. And so they can reach us directly at Whitney@familylife.com, Whitney, WHITNEY @familylife.com, or you can call 985-210-1310, 985-210-1310. There are limited scholarships for this initiative. And like I said, it is a full scholarship for the event. It does not include the lodging and food, but we want to be able to support first responders and veterans. But we do have a sale coming up starting April the 4th through the 15th, and that'll be online. You can go to the same site, familylife.com/Weekend to Remember.
Awesome, awesome. So, Annetta, I'm sure this has happened at least once before where one or the other spouse does not want to go.
Oh, it happened with me. My husband didn't want to go. Are you kidding me?
So what might be some wisdom, some tips in that?
Well, we say the invitation is open. Okay. We've had guests that would just register by themselves and attend the entire weekend without their spouse. Okay. We've also had spouses to leave the event and one spouse stays. Wow. So the encouragement is, it's for you.
Okay.
Because God has to first deal with you first, where you are. Okay. And I just say that there's still hope, I know the word says that the unbelieving spouse can be won over. So it's like you have to really equip yourself. You got to fortify yourself. So I would say don't count it out. Even if your spouse doesn't come, the invitation is open. Luke 14 says, go behind the hedge. He says, invite the cripple, invite the blind, the lame, invite until the house is full. So if that means it's just one of you that comes, we invite you. You're welcome. And we celebrate that you're coming.
I think that is amazing. That's great. Because I'm also sure there have been many instances where one or the other did not want to come, but who drug themselves.
Yes. There's one couple, one of the reviews says they basically were going to cancel.
Okay.
They had divorce papers and they were ready.
Wow.
And they persevered and they came.
Wow.
And they burned their divorce papers on Saturday night.
Oh my goodness. Decided to reconcile and stay together.
Yes.
Awesome. Wow. Well, you've heard it, folks. We've been talking to Annetta Whitney about a weekend to remember, and the next registration could be yours. So we do encourage you, whether you are considering marriage or you've been married 10 years, 30 years, 50 years, there's something for everyone at this conference. Annetta, just tell us again the dates and the details.
So the dates will be in Sugar Land at the Marriott in the Sugar Land Town Center. You can register at 1-800-FL-TODAY, 1-800-FL-TODAY, or you can go online at familylife.com/weekend to remember. Or you can contact me directly if you're eligible for the Luke 14 initiative that scholarships first responders and veterans at awhitney@familylife.com, awhitney@familylife.com, or 985-210-1310.
Thanks again to our guest, Annetta Whitney. Annetta, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Our thoughts and prayers are with you and Rodney as you prepare for this big event here in Sugar Land for a weekend to remember. And thanks, as always, to our audience for joining us. And we hope you'll tune in again next week for another edition of Community Beat. I'm Kim Kasi McKee on 89.3 KSBJ.
Thanks for joining us for Community Beat with Kim Kasi McKee. Join us every Saturday morning at 5:30 on 89.3 KSBJ.